This year has brought significant change within the first-person shooter genre. The Call of Duty fatigue brought on as a result of the plentiful immersion-breaking cosmetics present throughout Black Ops 6 has led to many prior Call of Duty fans to switch to the Battlefield franchise. Essentially, Battlefield 6 could not have been released at a better time. In that case, we may question whether or not Battlefield 6's success was brought about by true quality, or if most of it stems from Call of Duty fatigue, as well as the distaste brought about by the disastrous launch of Battlefield 2042. So, without further ado, on to the review.
That's our cue.
As always, we start with level design. In single player, the middle of the campaign contains many very similar linearly designed levels in which you just shoot enemies as you move on to other areas. Unsurprisingly, this level design proves very boring and repetitive. Also, the levels are incredibly restricted. If you leave the main mission area, which happens many times as the borders are very strict and confusing, you only receive a 5-second timer, which is just ridiculous. I died many times from that incredibly short timer, which was infuriating thanks to the few checkpoints sprinkled throughout the levels. In multiplayer, most of the maps are designed very well and I found no problems. I didn't like the smaller maps myself, but many others will. Additionally, the end of the campaign did present some surprisingly good level design, including one instance where you had a large map and 3 different objectives to do in any order you wish. You could drive between them using vehicles. That truly felt like what a Battlefield campaign should be like, open rather than linear. I cannot emphasize how boring it was to play through those incredibly restrictive linear missions. Since they take up the majority of the campaign, I'm unfortunately going to have to give this a 1 out of 3 for level design. There are simply too many significant issues which could so easily be fixed. Up next is the controls and responsiveness. Playing this game on a mouse and keyboard, I found no issues. Unsurprisingly, all weapons handle extremely well and they feel very responsive. Admittedly, helicopters were a little difficult to control, but that is easily fixed with a controller. Regardless, it's very difficult to make good helicopter controls on a mouse and keyboard, and DICE certainly did a respectable job of it here. I'm giving controls and responsiveness a 2 out of 2. Third, we have the glitches and bugs. I'll give props to DICE here. They really improved from the disaster that was 2042. Battlefield 6 is an immensely polished game, and, among the issues I found, glitches were not one of them. In fact, I cannot think of any moment in which a glitch appeared. Performance is also excellent thanks to the DLSS features the game provides, which allowed me to get more than 60 frames per second easily. Clearly, Battlefield 6 deserves a 3 out of 3 for glitches and bugs. Onto the artificial intelligence. In the campaign, enemy AI was very inconsistent. At times, they would use cover and properly attempt to ambush you, and at others, they would stay in a group and simply rush forward, making for a very challenging experience. Most of the time, however, the game was very easy, as the enemies had terrible aim. Moreover, when you get killed in the campaign, you'll enter a state in which you can be revived by your teammates. The factors determining whether or not your teammates will walk towards you and rescue you seem very inconsistent as well. I've had many teammates go through many bullets to rescue me. Other times, they seemingly abandon me in cases which seem just as, if not less, dangerous. Thus, artificial intelligence receives a 1 out of 2. Now, we have the overall fun factor. As mentioned, the repetitive and boring level design combined with the very rudimentary AI made for quite a poor campaign. I found it very boring and in the end simply wanted to get it over with, which is unfortunate as it really does save the best missions for the end. However, I'm also aware that that is insignificant to most players. What is really important is the multiplayer, and it is awesome in this game. It is just as fun, addicting, and entertaining as ever. To be honest, I have very little to say as there is basically nothing to criticize. Everything is done incredibly well here. Weapons feel great, vehicles feel great, and there are a grand variety of both. Progression is admittedly very slow, although satisfying nonetheless. The core gameplay is excellent here. I do also want to bring attention to the audio of this game, which is honestly some of the best in any FPS I've played. Everything sounds extremely realistic. That, complemented with the game's incredibly realistic graphics, makes for a very cinematic experience. Indeed, the multiplayer of this game has no shortage of the cinematic moments which Battlefield games are known for. Thankfully, the class system also makes a return. This adds a bit of strategy into the game, as you need to pick a class which can help your squad or entire team best, which can be tough as each of the 4 classes have different and desirable abilities. Unfortunately, every class can use any weapon. Classes do give bonuses to their relevant weapons. For instance, if you are playing Recon, snipers will get bonuses, but these do not change much. While playing, I see incredibly few players playing Assault, as it has one of the less useful abilities, and any class can use assault rifles. In any other title, people would have played Assault solely to gain access to assault rifles, but that is not the case here. This is a very unfortunate change, and I think weapons should undoubtedly be locked to the relevant classes so that the strategy in choosing classes isn't negated. Luckily, the Portal mode has many closed weapon playlists, so this issue can easily be fixed, and players are basically given the freedom to play with or without this feature. As for scoring this, I think the campaign is probably a 6 out of 10 or so, and the multiplayer is probably a 9. In the end, I feel obliged to round down since I was being generous with the campaign anyways. Thus, I think this game deserves an overall fun factor of 7 out of 10. Thus, the total score for gameplay is a 14 out of 20.
Here we are, Dagger 1-3. In 3 mics, you'll enter Gibraltar airspace. This place has been fought over for centuries. Now Pax Armada have opened that wound after NATO's kept it safe for decades. And there's no way we're letting them have it without a fight.
Dagger, this is Pax's ballsiest play yet. If they succeed, they will have secured the most strategic rock in the history of warfare. The British Squad Lancer are already on deck and in position. Hey, Devil Dogs! Want to help our friends take back this rock? Hoorah! 1 minute! Bills, you hearing me?
Got you 5x5. Send it.
On final approach, looking good.
Copy that. Phase 1's complete. Artillery's pummeled the rock, weakening Pax's defense systems. We've cleared the way for Phase 2. First objective is to rendezvous with Lancer, push through and provide sniper coverage so they can neutralize the radar asset. From there, it's a short hump to Pax's anti-air defense, our second objective. Once down, Command can launch Phase 3. Bravo element will land on the rock with you and move on their objective. Happy landings, Dagger. Mills out.
Never a dull moment on this fucking team. Ready for this?
Always faithful, always forward.
All right, Gecko. Let's introduce Dagger to the rock.
Up first is the dialogue. The dialogue in the Battlefield 6 campaign is, like the main plot itself, very generic and basic. There is very little creativity in the dialogue. It feels as if anyone in the world could have written it. I'll give dialogue 0 out of 2. Secondly, we have the characters. Thanks to the subpar dialogue, the characters are generally not especially unique nor exciting. The story gives very little opportunities for any of the characters to shine. Consequently, when deaths did occur, I felt very little emotion, as the personality of the victim was simply not developed enough. However, I do feel as if the gameplay helps here. As mentioned, when downed, your teammates will revive you. This gameplay mechanic, in my opinion, helps to create a bond between the player and the other squad members, as they will save your life many times. Consequently, I think it's fair to give characters a 1 out of 2 due to the failures in characterization, but triumphs of the gameplay. On to the acting. The acting does very little to alleviate the failures of the dialogue. Everything is delivered in gruff voices with only slight changes in pitch to indicate any modicum of emotion. The subtle manner of the acting makes some of the emotional moments laughable at times due to how apathetic the characters seem at seeing their friends get brutally injured or murdered. Acting gets a 0 out of 1. Now we have the replayability. As is common for FPS titles, there are many difficulties to choose from, which change your health and the amount of times teammates can revive you. As I mentioned prior, however, the campaign is generally quite easy and you will probably start off at a pretty high difficulty anyways. There are also dog tag collectibles, which you will need for 100% completion. Upon collecting all these, you will also get some cosmetics in the multiplayer mode. That being said, the incredible linearity of the campaign does heavily discourage replayability, and so I feel forced to give replayability 1 out of 2 points. The next category is the atmosphere and mood. Generally, each level is set in different locations which do complement each other somewhat, although there could undoubtedly be more variety in these locations. That being said, I do want to compliment the game's music, which was great throughout, contributed to the cinematic feeling of the game. As mentioned, the audio in general is fantastic and does contribute to this feeling. Generally, the graphics are also great and very realistic, which also helps. I do believe that DICE did an excellent job of giving this game a cinematic feeling, and as such, I feel it appropriate to award this game with 3 out of 3 for the atmosphere and mood. Lastly, we have the plot quality. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, the story here is immensely generic, basic, and generally uncreative. The plot gives you little to care about, as most of the characters do very little anyways. Ultimately, all this story really consists of is just the military trying to hunt a villain. The rest of the game is just meaningless exposition. The plot makes the story so thoroughly boring throughout, which, when combined with the at times annoying and restrictive gameplay, made for a fare which I wanted to be done with as quickly as I could. However, there is a bit of a twist at the end, which was not surprising, but at least it's something slightly creative. It will, at the very least, keep this shit from receiving a 1. I suppose that means plot quality gets a 2 out of 10, in my book. That means the total score for the story is a pretty painful 7 out of 20. At least it's an improvement from 2042.
Yes. Yes. Keep the pressure on. Doesn't help. Don't let this tear you down.
Battlefield 6 is currently priced at €69.99, with the Phantom Edition available for €99.99. The Phantom Edition mostly gives you cosmetic items, however, along with some XP boosts and weapons. It's certainly not worth €30 in my book, but you do you, I suppose. That indeed is notable. Battlefield 6 is not an antidote to Call of Duty. The game is still littered with cosmetic microtransactions and battle passes. These are all military themed, however, so they do not break immersion, if that is a concern for you. If microtransactions are, though, this is not a game for you, as it contains plenty. Regarding the €70 asking price, however, I think it's far too expensive. €60 is what I would consider reasonable for a game with this much content. Unfortunately, most of that content is awful. I honestly do not recommend that you play this campaign. I regret playing it. If you buy this game, buy it for the multiplayer and that only. Notably, there is also the Portal mode, which I admittedly did not spend all that much time in, as most of the experiences I tried were very buggy and did not work. However, I know lots of people have had these experiences work for them, and they did enjoy them, so I presume the bugs I experienced were due to connection issues. Anyhow, there are many user-created experiences which allow you to practice your multiplayer skills or just screw around with minigames, which you may find quite fun. Still, the meat of the package is the multiplayer, which is as polished as ever and is consistently receiving more content through updates. It is, indeed, a promising package, but not one worth €70. It is worth far less than that. I would not pay above €50 for this game, to be honest, so I recommend you wait for a discount because the asking price is unfair. As such, I'll provide 3 out of 10 points for content and pricing, as it is significantly overpriced. All in all, that means Battlefield 6 earned 24 out of 50, which is converted to a C. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day.